Hello and welcome to Newsweek South Asia, your one-stop destination for in-depth analysis of security challenges, regional conflicts and the evolving threat of terrorism. Let's take a look at the headlines first. Shameful record since 1971, India exposes Pakistan's abuse of women at UN. UN warns of the world's most severe women's rights crisis in Afghanistan. And Pakistan battered by monsoon flash floods as government neglects worsens crisis. For decades, Pakistan has carried a shameful legacy of sexual violence, beginning with the atrocities of 1971 and continuing today with the persecution of its religious minorities. From the mass sexual assaults of hundreds of thousands of Bengali women to the forced abductions and conversions of Hindu and Christian girls, Islamabad has nurtured a culture of impunity. Yet, in a display of hypocrisy, Pakistan tried to accuse India of crimes against women at the UN. But this propaganda backfired. India's strong response laid bare Pakistan's own dark record. We have a report.
Pakistan's record on women's rights has long been one of violence, impunity and systemic abuse. From persecuting its minorities to shielding perpetrators of sexual crimes, Islamabad has built a shameful legacy that continues even today. And yet, despite this deplorable record, Pakistan attempted to raise the issue of sexual violence in Jammu and Kashmir at the UN Security Council's open debate this week. But India's chargé d'affaires at the UN, Eldos Matthew Punos, delivered a scathing rebuttal, reminding Islamabad of its shameful past and its ongoing abuse of women and minorities. He reminded the world of Pakistan Army's brutal record in 1971, when between 200,000 and 400,000 Bengali women were raped during the Liberation War in East Pakistan. These were not random crimes. The violence was systematic. Rape camps were set up, Hindu women were singled out, and pregnancies were forced as part of a deliberate strategy to terrorize communities. To this day, Pakistan has refused to apologize or accept accountability for these crimes against humanity.
The utter impunity with which Pakistan Army perpetrated heinous crimes of gross sexual violence against hundreds of thousands of women in erstwhile East Pakistan in 1971 is a matter of shameful record. This deplorable pattern continues unabated and with impunity to this day.
The Indian envoy underlined that Pakistan's shameful legacy did not end in 1971. It continues in the form of abductions, forced conversions, child marriages and sexual violence against minority women, particularly Hindus and Christians in Sindh and Punjab. According to a 2024 report by the Sustainable Social Development Organization, Pakistan recorded 24,000 cases of abductions, 5,000 cases of rape and 500 so-called dishonor killings last year alone. Hindu minor girls remain the most vulnerable, often kidnapped, forcibly married to abductors and converted against their will. Crimes that Pakistan's judiciary routinely validates instead of punishing.
Rampant abduction, trafficking, child early and forced marriages and domestic servitude, sexual violence and forced religious conversions of thousands of vulnerable women and girls as weapons of persecution towards religious and ethnic minority communities are reported and chronicled, including in the recent OHCHR reports. These reports highlight that the vile acts by Pakistan are also validated by its judiciary. It is ironical that those who perpetrate these crimes are now masquerading as champions of justice. The duplicity and hypocrisy is self-evident.
India, by contrast, has taken concrete steps to safeguard women, both at home and abroad. Domestically, initiatives like the Nirbhaya Fund, nationwide emergency helplines, and one-stop crisis centers provide institutional support to survivors of sexual violence. Internationally, India was the first country to deploy an all-women police unit in UN peacekeeping and continues to push survivor-focused reforms within the UN system. While Islamabad clings to denial and doublespeak, New Delhi's record demonstrates accountability, protection and action, values Pakistan has failed to uphold.
Four years into Taliban rule, Afghanistan has become the world's only country where half the population is systematically erased from public life. Since seizing power in August 2021, the Taliban have weaponized religion and law to crush women's rights, banning them from schools, universities, workplaces, and even public parks. What remains is not just a humanitarian catastrophe, but a gender apartheid, an assault on women's existence, and that is pushing Afghanistan deeper into poverty and instability. When the Taliban rolled into Kabul in 2021, they promised a softer image compared to the brutal regime of the 1990s. But the reality has been far from worse. Women and girls were the first to be targeted. Secondary schools slammed their gates shut on girls.
When it comes to education and employment, women and girls are still barred from high schools, universities, and most jobs, devastating a generation of young Afghan women.
Universities expelled female students overnight, and degrees followed, barring women from jobs, public spaces, and even the right to travel without a male guardian. The consequences are devastating. Nearly 8 out of 10 young Afghan women today are locked out of education, employment, or training, 4 times higher than their male counterparts. Denying girls an education is not only robbing them of their futures, but also bleeding Afghanistan's economy. According to UN report, the ban on girls' secondary education alone costs the country 2.5% of its GDP every year.
These restrictions are not temporary, not one has been reversed. It is the most severe women's rights crisis in the world, and it's being normalised.
Even women who still manage to work are not spared from intimidation. The latest UN report documents growing restrictions on employment, despite Taliban claims that Islam allows women to work. The report also highlights shocking threats faced by Afghan women working with the United Nations itself.
Turning to Afghanistan, the latest update in the human rights situation in that country, covering a period from April to June of 2025, points that the UN assistance mission has received various reports of the de facto Taliban authorities impeding women's right to work, despite publicly affirming that Islam permits women to work and to be entrepreneurs. Based on monitoring by the UN Mission's Human Rights Service, the update also notes that in May, dozens of women working for the United Nations were subject to explicit death threats from unidentified individuals in relation to their work with the UN Mission and other UN agencies, funds, and programs.
Healthcare tells another tragic story. Women face growing barriers to medical treatment. In some provinces, they are denied care by male doctors. Yet, female doctors are vanishing after the Taliban blocked women from studying medicine or midwifery. The result? Rising maternal deaths, soaring child marriage, and a mental health crisis driven by isolation, fear, and despair. Workplace exclusion has left Afghanistan with one of the world's widest gender gaps. Less than 25% of women are employed or seeking work, compared to nearly 90% of men. Taliban restrictions have gutted civil society, silenced women leaders, and forced NGOs to either shut down or erase the word women from their projects. safety is another illusion. With no laws or services to protect them, women face rising gender-based violence. Early and forced marriages are increasing as desperate families give away their daughters to survive economic hardship. Widows and single women with no male relatives to escort them must risk harassment or violence simply to buy food or visit a doctor.
The UN Assistance Mission in Afghanistan also noted that the de facto authorities' monitoring of women's adherence to the hijab instruction appeared to have intensified in some parts of the country. The update also mentioned recorded incidents of gender-based violence against women and girls, including cases in which officials of the de facto authorities were accused of being both the perpetrators of forced marriage and enforcing forced marriage.
The Taliban are closer than ever to their dark vision of a society without women. No female voices in government. No women in leadership. No images of women on television or at official events. Afghanistan today stands as a reminder of what state-sanctioned misogyny looks like in its purest form.
If we ignore the tightening strictures on Afghan women and girls, we send a message that this is normal and that the rights of women and girls everywhere are disposable or irrelevant. We cannot accept the denial of their rights as the new normal.
Year after year, Pakistan is battered by floods, and year after year, its people are left to fend for themselves. Despite billions in international aid after previous floods, the government remains unprepared. This monsoon season has once again exposed the hollowness of Pakistan's disaster response, as hundreds perish and thousands are displaced. A report.
Pakistan is no stranger to flooding. Built on fragile infrastructure, poor drainage and rampant corruption, the country remains one of the most vulnerable in South Asia to climate-related disasters. International donors have repeatedly urged Islamabad to invest in resilience, but political infighting and misuse of funds means nothing changes on the ground. This year, the warnings came true again. Flash floods triggered by intense rains since August 15 have killed at least 341 people, according to Disaster Authority. In total, more than 660 lives have been lost since late June across the country during the monsoon season.
जो कुदरती आफत आया है इस पूरे इलाके पर उसमें 200 से ज़ायद लोग जो है वो कैजुअल्टीज़ हो चुकी है। इस वक्त भी सर्च ऑपरेशन जारी है, कुछ डेड बॉडीज़ अभी तक रिकवर नहीं हो सकी, लेकिन बहुत ज़्यादा नुकसान हुआ है, जानी नुकसान हुआ है और माली नुकसान का तो अरबों में हुआ है, उसका हम अंदाज़ा नहीं लगा सकते। इस वक्त एक्टिविटीज़ जारी है बहाली के लिए।
The worst devastation came in Buner district of Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, where a rare cloudburst dumped over 150 millimeters of rain in just 1 hour, unleashing torrents of water that swept away homes, livestock and entire neighborhoods. Officials admit that over 200 people were killed in district alone.
क्लाउड बर्स्ट हुआ है, यहाँ पे तो कोई समंदर वगैरह नहीं है, क्लाउड बर्स्ट हुआ है और एक सैलाबी रेला है। तो ये चूँकि जो मेन उसका पॉइंट था वो यही था, यहाँ पे ये क्लाउड बर्स्ट हुआ है, यहाँ से आगे फिर पानी गए। तो ये मुकम्मल तौर पर अगर मुकम्मल तौर पर नहीं है तो 70-80% ये गाँव जो है वो मलियामेट हुआ है, और अगर मलियामेट पूरा नहीं हुआ तो डैमेज तो एटलीस्ट सारे घर हुए हैं।
Drone footage shows the devastation: collapsed houses, blocked roads, washed out bridges and families stranded. Survivors accuse the authorities of neglect, saying that no one from the government reached them in time.
Garaji kaka sasu dera manana shuraji tausu mate dura lo samrojo ligi ta shitrawo rusa pore mong matlab dera na EPI menez nur do tarik insaf ala takriban da hukumat yo kasna yakhara shoy akal silab charaga na tatafuna ala wada kurna gandi musalsal da gabar sar nawal pa makhra rawanu rakhira pore da tol de walne warshwal takriban bafal kur ki takriban shpak kasan manga de budu koriu ayom mashun dum kan de workin khate wo takriban 2 घंटे de pasa shoy mun ta patan lege da yo qiyamत zam ka rajul shera alag sho bar lamnge par supa zere bar wakh jolu 2 غنډې پس بیا موږ آوازونه چغې وهلې نو دی آواز راغی په هغه بیا په پرزیدنټ رالو او 2 غنډې پس هغه موږ راوځو.
The crisis is not confined to the north. In Karachi, heavy downpours have once again brought the city to its knees. Gridlocked traffic, power outages, and waterlogging turned Pakistan's financial capital into a death trap, with at least 17 fatalities reported from electrocution, building collapse, and drowning. Fatima Bhutto on X. This corrupt party can't manage rain even though it rains every monsoon season since the dawn of time. What do you do for the people with your power? Nothing. Citizens say that every year, Pakistan's leaders hide behind excuses of unprecedented weather. But the reality is that decades of negligence, poor planning and corruption have left the state incapable of protecting its people from predictable monsoon rains.
रास्ते बहाल करने चाहिए, बिजली बहाल करनी चाहिए, सिग्नल नहीं है। ऐसा है ये अभी भी खतरनाक है। गांव के ऊपर ये पानी एक साइड पे करनी चाहिए एक्सवेटर और मशीनरी के ज़रिए से, ताकि ये एक साइड पे बह जाएं, ताकि दूसरी साइड पे लोग अपना काम वगैरह अपनी बहाली जारी रख सकें। हुकूमत से पुरज़ोर मुतालिबा है जितनी भी मशीनरी है वहाँ वो यहाँ पहुँच जाए, ताकि हमारे जो मुतासिरीन हैं उसकी बहाली में हम मदद कर सकें।
The pattern is clear. Pakistan's people suffer, its government deflects blame, and the cycle repeats every monsoon. For flood victims in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa and Karachi, the rains may have passed, but the real storm, the storm of the government failure, is far from over.
From reckless nuclear threats by Pakistan's army chief to Washington's growing warmth towards Islamabad, the shifting equations in global politics raise serious concerns for South Asia. The strain in US-India relations after the recent tariff dispute has further fueled speculation that Pakistan may be gaining an upper hand. But what does this mean for regional security, terrorism, and the Kashmir issue? To decode these developments, we are joined by Dr. Dipankar Sen Gupta, a geopolitical expert and professor of economics at the University of Jammu. Hello, sir. Welcome to our show. So my first question is, how do you assess the current global situation where Pakistan appears to be gaining an upper hand following the recent strain in US-India relations after the tariff dispute?
Now, look at the manner in which Pakistan has been playing up to this particular administration. They have been flattering him by saying that he should be given the Nobel Prize, number one. Number two, they have been flattering him by implying that he was the one who brought the Indo-Pak conflict to an end, when it was very well known that Pak was at the receiving end, and the only thing they did to India was to convey Pakistan's problems, and India said, only if they come through our DGMO will we accede to such a request. And the third, Pakistan's offer on cryptocurrency. Reports are that this particular administration is heavily into cryptocurrency, which itself I think is a very alarming thing.
During his visit to the US, Pakistan Army Chief General Asim Munir reportedly said, "We'll take down half the world." How do you interpret this nuclear threat by General Munir?
There are two things. One is, this is Pakistan being irresponsible again. There was American academic Stephen Cohen who said Pakistan is the only country that blackmails others by holding a gun to its own head. So this is basically a blackmail where they are saying we will take down half the world, including Pakistan. So these threats should not be taken seriously. Pakistan always thought that because they had nuclear arms, that they would be able to do anything in India without India responding because of a threat of nuclear war. I think over a number of years and a number of occasions, India has shown to Pakistan that this is not the case. That you do something stupid, we will do something deliberate. As we did most recently, where we blew up their air bases, cratered their runways and destroyed their aircraft. We destroyed their assets, we made them paralyzed. So this is something that Pakistan knows. So if the so-called Field Marshal Munir is playing to audiences in Pakistan to show that Pakistan is not afraid at all, it is his business. What is alarming is that he made this statement while in the United States itself. And when he said we will take down half the world, did he include the United States or the allies of the United States? The United States fails to understand that the majority of the Pakistanis are anti-US to the point that many of them support terror activities in the United States. I think American will have to be struck once more to realize how dangerous Pakistan actually is.
So Pakistan has long been accused internationally of supporting terrorism. Even the US Special Forces found 9/11 mastermind Osama bin Laden hiding in Abbottabad. Despite this, why is the US showing increased closeness to Pakistan?
Trump has embarked on a policy of imposing tariffs on a lot of countries. He claims to be the ultimate deal maker, peacemaker. So far, none of the areas or the conflicts where he has entered can he credibly say that he is a peacemaker. He says he has two successes. One is he brought the Indo-Pak conflict to a close, which he did not. His administration conveyed their worries to India, and India set terms under which it will stop attacking Pakistan. Those terms were conveyed to Pakistan. Pakistan called us. They conveyed their acceptance of these particular terms, whereupon India stopped. So his peace achievements are dubious. His tariffs have not worked with any economy so far. So he is trying to claim success by saying that we have a successful deal with Pakistan and a successful deal with Bangladesh. And these two countries are playing up his ego. That is why in an area and in a series of initiatives where nothing seems to be working, you have Pakistan massaging his ego, and therefore they have decided that at this point in time they will forget Pakistan's involvement in terror and consider Pakistan as a friend.
Could this renewed US-Pakistan engagement have an impact on the Kashmir issue, with Islamabad possibly seeking US support for its so-called claim over Kashmir?
It could. You see, right now the Americans are trying, using all levers to basically get India to agree to their terms, both with respect to the purchase of Russian oil as long as the FTA. So it could. But the fact is, as a lot of people have said, what happens in Jammu and Kashmir actually depends on India's policy response. The only lever that Pakistan has is to push terror across the encourage terrorism in this particular state. As long as India's actions in Pakistan in this case are robust, Pakistan will know what it can do, what it can't do. The Americans per se have no leverage. If they take the matter to the Security Council, you will always have countries like France and Russia vetoing it. See, all this while in the Security Council, it was China who was towing the Pakistan line on Kashmir. It may be possible that Americans may also tow the Pakistani line on Kashmir. But you have two other members of the Security Council which will side with India, which means that legally what American can do about it is fairly limited.
Do you foresee a rise in terror incidents in Jammu and Kashmir as a result of this emerging geopolitical situation?
Let us not rule it out. But then the solution for tackling terror remains the same as before. That if it is Pakistani inspired, hit Pakistan. But if it is domestic, our domestic security grid is working so fine that the number of terror incidents in Jammu and Kashmir involving local terrorists is practically zero. You have seen these spectacular attacks from time to time, and within no time at all our security forces have understood where they come from and they have been neutralized. A Pulwama or a Pahalgam will or may take place. You know where they will come from, and then you do whatever you did before. And this time the government of India has warned the Pakistani military that this time if an attack takes place, we will assume that this attack has been ordered by the Pakistani military and we will act accordingly. I think the Pakistani military does not want to scrap with India. So let us see. I am hopeful, but the appropriate policy in these times is to hope for the best but expect the worst.
Thank you so much for sharing your insights, sir.
Thank you for having me on the show.
And with that, we come to the end of this edition of Newsweek South Asia. We'll be back next week with more news, views and analysis from the subcontinent. Meanwhile, to keep writing to us at nwsa@nin.com. This is Shivangi Mishra signing off on behalf of the entire team of Newsweek South Asia. Goodbye and take care.